Richard, thanks very much for joining the show today. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I'm just going to jump straight into it, Richard. In terms of your leadership skills, how do you lead at the moment, and how has that evolved over the years that you've been in business?
Well, I'm a bit of an old-fashioned leader, so I'm not a great believer in people working from home, to be frank. But my PA is just going to walk in. Is that going to cause a problem?
Pardon, sorry?
My PA
No, that's absolutely fine, not to worry.
So I am a bit old-fashioned. However, I think that the fact that we retain our staff for longer, I think, than most companies do in this day and age would probably be an indication that we run a business, or I run the business well. I am old-fashioned. I don't believe in mufti days. That people come to work in a suit. You don't have to wear a tie. You have to wear a tie if you go to a meeting. So I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur. However, I would like to think that I pay well. I'm fair with my staff. We run a long day. I mean, we start at 8:30 in the morning. We finish at 6, but a lot of the staff stay on until 6:45, particularly the graduates. And I think that's indicative that people like their work, and it's not just a job. And that's the atmosphere I try and create. We have a lot of days out. We're going to London for our Christmas party, and I'm not going just to the local pub. We're getting a coach. We're going to a decent restaurant. We're going to go and have a few drinks in the West End. So it's a fairly expensive day for the business, but people like that. And that's really my style.
Was that something when you first started out in business, Richard, that you did you have any mentors when you were first starting out that you learnt from and how to lead?
Well, I was brought up in a fairly disciplined way. My father was a Grenadier Guard, so I mean, you always had clean shoes and things like that, but he wasn't really in business too much himself. He was a businessman, but he didn't really run big businesses. There was a guy that when I was young I used to work for who was a very successful businessman, and I watched a lot of what he did and talked to him a lot. And I think that just the way of my upbringing, I went to a boarding school, and when I went to boarding school, which is obviously quite a long time ago now, boarding schools were tough. And they were disciplined, and you didn't have any heating in the bedroom, and you went for a run at 7 o'clock in the morning. Didn't matter how much ice there was on the ground or snow on the ground, you went for the run.
Yeah.
And so I came up in a fairly disciplined sort of environment, and I've always been very disciplined myself. I always wear a suit to work, always have clean shoes, and I've reflected that onto the staff that work for me. And I'd like to think that we've got I wouldn't like to think, I know that we have a happy workforce because they carry on working here.
That leads me on to my next question. So in terms of the core competencies you have to be a good leader, would you say that discipline is right up there? And what other characteristics would you say makes a good leader?
I think if staff make a mistake, they need to be able to feel that they can come and tell you straight. I mean, everyone that works here knows that if they make a mistake, I would rather know than not know. So covering something up would be a felony to me. Coming to tell me, look, I've made a mistake, Richard, this is what I've done, what do you think? And we'll talk it through and we'll resolve it. I think that's important, so staff need to know that there is no need to hide something if they make a mistake, because we all make mistakes, and I just think it's right that they can come and tell you that. And I just think that just having decent relationships with your staff and making sure that they're okay, and if they seem a bit down, taking it to one side and saying you don't seem yourself, what's the problem, have you got a problem? So I as much as being disciplined, I have a sort of compassionate side as well.
Yeah.
And I think that people appreciate that. So I think that's important.
Is part of the skill of being a leader understanding when to use that compassion and when to use that more disciplined side?
Yeah, undoubtedly. I mean, it's about having good social skills. That's what being a good leader is about, having good social skills. So, when on Monday mornings we have a team meeting in here, I usually come in last, and I always say good morning to everyone, and we all say good morning. It's a bit like that. And if I notice someone's a bit down in the mouth, we have 3 monthly appraisals in this business. Everyone is appraised every 3 months, not once a year.
Yeah.
I think that's important, because I think yearly appraisals are a waste of time, because you've really forgotten the mistakes that you've seen in the first 3 months of the year. So if you have 3 monthly appraisals, we've got some graduates here. We've got 3 graduates. One of them was struggling a bit a while ago, and I brought him in about 3 weeks before his appraisal, and I said, you need to pull your socks up, otherwise your appraisal is not going to be particularly comfortable. And he took that on board, and by the time we got to the appraisal 3 weeks later, he'd sorted himself out. He was basically split up with his girlfriend and just wasn't getting on his job. But I had a little chat with him, and things got better, and he appreciated that. And actually, when the appraisal was heard with me, the appraisals don't last very long. When the appraisal was heard with me, he said to me afterwards, I was really pleased that you spotted that and chat with me. So it does go down well to do that. You need to be in tune with what's going on around you, I think, to be a good leader. I mean, if you just sit in an ivory tower and never walk around the office, and you don't know what's going on, and I listen to other people's comments. I'm walking through the office and I'll hear someone say something, and I'll just go, why do you want to do that? Explain to me why. And so I'm involved in what goes on. I go to the sites and I talk to the site managers. Not that the site managers work directly for us because they're on JCT contracts, but I show an interest in everything that goes on around me and everything that could affect the business, and I think that's important.
In terms of your appraisals, do you give accountability to the team member? So you kind of say, look, here's some accountability, set some targets for yourself, or do you set those kind of targets for them, or do you work together? Is it more of a collaboration?
It's very difficult in this industry to set targets. We obviously have appraisal targets, which is obviously financial targets. But the acquisition or identifying of new sites is something that you can't really set targets for. Funny enough, I've just had a sites meeting, and I did actually say that the pipeline was looking a little bit small. And it's just the dynamics of what's going on at the moment with build costs and inflation. It's proving very difficult to get sites to work on our parameters on our appraisal, and as a result of that, the pipeline of new sites that would be coming through in 2 or 3 years' time is looking a little bit sparse. So, but I would rather that we were keeping to our appraisal goals and targets, and we were looking a little bit sparse. But I've made it very plain today that we need to up our game, because quite clearly that's looking a little anemic, and we can't have an anemic pipeline because we've got an expensive business to run.
Absolutely. We'll definitely come back to that in terms of development and costs and the difficulties that developers are having at the moment. But if we can go into yourself, Richard, what motivates you to continue trying to build businesses and keep going?
I can't sit at home. I'm not one of those blokes. I just am. I don't understand the concept of retirement. I just really don't get it. I like creating things. That's what drives me. I've always been very creative, and I spend a lot of time on the architectural side and the interior design side of the business, and I sort of look after that myself. And I direct the architects of what sort of architecture I want where. So when we finish the job, I like to stand across the road from it and go, I'm proud of that. Recently we finished some houses, and I went back and they were sold about a year ago, and I thought, I was driving past that part of the country, and I went back to look at the development, and I was horrified because everyone had put garden sheds all over the place and wood and wood close boarded fences and ruined the aesthetics of my development, and I drove away really quite upset. But that's just, once people have bought a house, they're free to do what they want with it, I suppose. But when it was finished, it all looked nice and clean and symmetrical, and everything was very pretty. And everyone's gone and done their own thing now and hung up things in the garden and things like that. But that's just the way it is.
Absolutely. When you worked, because obviously understanding your past, you worked in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
Did you have that same feeling of sense of achievement? Because with property, like you say, you design it, you build it out, you see the finished product, you sell it, and you can be proud of that when you're looking at it. Did you have that same sense of achievement within that hospitality industry?
Yeah, because my business career, I started in business when I was 21, has always been about planning. So I originally started in fast food, and in those days that was an enormous hurdle with the planners getting new units on the high street. Then obviously I was heavily involved in leisure. As I was the youngest ever, well, I don't know if I am now, but at the time, youngest ever chairman and chief executive of a public limited company. I used to we used to create edge of town developments, leisure developments, and yes, exactly the same thing. The only problem is that you used to create lovely shiny new bars and nightclubs and 10-pin bowling centres, and you go back there 3 years later and they weren't shiny anymore. But I've always enjoyed creating new things and being industrious. I was putting in multi-sex toilets 25 years ago. Now you've got girls and boys sharing toilets. But I was doing that 25 years ago in nightclubs. So I sort of laugh when I see debates about this on television and on the radio now, that we were doing that 25 years ago. So I've always been very much someone who likes to be in front of the game and making changes, and that's what we do now. I mean, I think that in Fortitudo, we oversupply on a lot of our starter homes. People walk in and go, "Wow, I'm getting this for 185, 195,000," because we will spend that little bit more on the bathroom, that little bit more on the kitchen, just to make the product. Absolutely. So people have got, sense of ownership in it.
Do you think that's where some other property developers go wrong, where they don't focus enough on quality and it's more about the cost and savings, and that's reflected in maybe when some people get in trouble?
I mean, it's all about place in Fortitudo. It's all about creating a place, and a place that people look at and go, "Do you know what? That's a really lovely building." And that's what we specialise in creating. We spend that little bit more, but we invariably end up getting a little bit more for our end product. So actually, cut invariably doesn't help, because you end up selling things much more slowly. And when we open a show home, people come in and go, I've seen it happen. We had a development a few years ago in 2017, I think it was, in Havant, and we built 31 new 1 and 2 bedroom homes there, and there hadn't been anything new, I think, in Havant for many years, and I actually saw and witnessed a young girl with her father, and she was in tears that she was going to end up living in this brand new flat, which had a wall-hung toilet, wall-hung basin, fully tiled main bathroom, solid worktops in the kitchen, nice laminate flooring, low voltage lighting, and all those things. But a lot of those things we take for granted, but a lot of people in different parts of the country only ever see that on television or in a magazine. And when they actually think, "God, I'm going to get this," it's quite an emotional thing for them. But that's nice to be able to do that, and that's what one of our logos is, making lives better. And I'd like to think that the product that we create and bring to the market does make people's lives better.
Absolutely, completely agree. What's been some of your biggest failures, Richard?
2008 was my biggest failure. 2008, I was caught up in the financial mess that was created by America, unfortunately, and boxed up and sold to the world, and created the financial crash. I lost my life's work in 2008, and it took me quite a long time to recover. But we're back now. We're a fairly substantial business in this area. I mean, in the south of England. But I mean, we develop as far west as Bath at the moment, and as far east as Hove. So we are a regional developer again. But no, it wasn't a very pleasant time in my life, particularly as I was actually going to slow down a little bit after in about 2009. But there we go.
Maybe the universe just wanted you to carry on creating stuff.
Maybe.
In terms of, let's dig a little slightly deeper if we can in 2008. Was there any particular things that you look back and think, I could have done that differently?
No.
You don't?
No. It's I'm very much into politics and economics, and being a developer, you need to be. And I was watching all of the stats. I mean, everything looked fine, didn't it? I mean, it was just simply the toxic debt that it had been created, and then you had Northern Rock obviously got caught up in it. You had Bear Stearns, and you had the RBS recapitalisation by the government. Well, that was all created by the financial collapse, and quite simply we were moving stuff forward. Everything was selling fine, and all of a sudden all of this started happening around us, and the banks got very nervous, and they pulled the plug, and that was the end of that. And at the time I had a leisure business as well, but of course that was cross guaranteed to my construction or my development business, and I lost everything and had to start again. But there we go.
Do you think there was a number of people that didn't start again after that?
Oh, loads. I mean, I know various people. I know one guy in particular who got caught up. He didn't actually go. He didn't go into administration. What happened to him is that the bank insisted on him having his industrial parks revalued. Because they said that there was a covenant on his loans. He was paying all of his debt, he was paying all of his interest. He had a revaluation. The revaluation came in substantially less than what was required by the covenant, and NatWest Bank basically took his business from him. He lost his wife. She went back to the Netherlands, and he ended up living in a one-bedroom flat, and in the end he got involved with various substances, and he died.
Yes,
very sad. But I think there's a lot of developers who had lost confidence. I mean, it's very unusual, I think, probably. I mean, I'm just over 60 now, but it's very unusual to be able to dust yourself off and get going again in your 50s. Particularly after you've taken a really hard knock. And I know I've got various other friends who have never really been the same. But it was a tough time for a lot of people.
Do you think that's a mental resilience thing, that as you get older, maybe some people start to lose that mental resilience, or do you think they just don't think they've got enough time to recover?
No, I think it's simply confidence. I mean, their confidence. I mean, I must be honest with you. I'll be brutally honest with you.
Please.
I'm probably a little more cautious now than what I used to be. I mean, quite clearly we're entering a very, very strange time economically at the moment.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's all very bizarre. I mean, we've got inflation tearing away. We've got interest rates at 0.1% and various threats for them to go up. But they've only got to go up by 0.1 and they've doubled, which is a bit of a strange situation.
Yeah.
And you've also got huge demand on luxury products and cars. And it all seems very, very strange. And I mean, it doesn't really all make sense, I think, the way it is. The economy is absolutely tearing away. I mean, this is an interesting point. I mean, a lot of people like to pull Boris down, but we've never had an economy like this. I mean, at the moment, it's almost impossible to get contractors to take new jobs on. We're really struggling at the moment to find contractors to take on new sites because they're all so busy. So yes, we are living through some very, very strange times and uncharted waters, because we've never been in this situation before, where a government has put £500 billion effectively into the country's economy. Not just this country; every Western country's done roughly the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Boris is trying to keep us all going again, and he obviously doesn't want lockdown because that would be catastrophic. But none of us really know where we're going, because we've sort of leapfrogged to 2030, haven't we? COVID has leapfrogged us into the future without us realising. Hence the reason why the high street is in such disarray. What's happened on the high street would have happened anyway. This is what I think.
Yes, accelerated by us.
Laugh about it.
Yeah.
It was going to happen, and this is why, I struggle when I read in the papers that they've appointed a czar to revitalise the high streets. I mean, the high streets aren't going to be revitalised. I mean, quite clearly, life has moved on, and hence the reason why there's such a demand at the moment for warehouses and distribution centres, because people like myself and like yourself don't go shopping anymore.
Absolutely. Do you think when we just going back, so there's quite a few things we just covered then, going back to how it seems to be a very strange market right now, do you feel that there is a potential correction coming in the next year or two? Because you don't think there would be?
No, I don't think there's going to be a correction. I think that it's very interesting. I think there'll be a slowdown, a substantial slowdown. I think we'll see in 22, 23 property growth slow down which it needs to, into single digits.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that the ability for young people to get on the housing ladder is going to get more difficult, which is a shame.
Yeah, especially with Help to Buy.
Yeah, Help to Buy going in 2023 is a travesty, and I think the government's made a huge mistake there. And I really hope that they change their mind on that. At the moment they're saying they're not going to, because the problem is that young people will then go to buy to rent property rather. Rents are very high, and the rents are so high that it prohibits people from being able to save for a deposit. So then they get caught in that rental trap, which is not a great thing. So it does worry me the demise of Help to Buy, and it's something that we're very well aware of here, and we are looking at the product mix that we're developing going forward into 22, 23, 24 obviously is going to have to substantially change.
Of course. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Take a one-bedroom flat. In this area now, a good one-bedroom flat is going from around the £200,000 mark. A guy on 30,000 a year can get 5 times his salary. That's 150. Well, where's he going to get a £50,000 deposit from? It's impossible. Even the bank of mum and dad are rarely going to get that. So the one-bed flat market, I think, for first-time buyers has gone. So that then gives you the next dynamic would be, right, so what about 2-bed flats? So a 2-bed flat, either 2 mates or a couple could buy it and they rent out the other room. If there's 2 people on 30,000 a year, that's 60,000. 5 times that is 300. They can afford to buy a 2-bedroom flat. So it's very interesting how the dynamics of the construction and development business are going to change without Help to Buy. There just will not be any more 1-bed flats. That's all there is to it.
But the caveat to that, though, Richard, would maybe planning. So are the planning department just going to allow you to do 52 beds? They like a mixed scheme, don't they? The planners.
Well, yes, they do. Interestingly, though, it's a very interesting point you make, and in some local plans, it's actually a diktat. I mean, in Winchester, you have to have a mix of 4, 3, and 2-bedroom houses. I'm remembering. Very rarely do they like 1-bedroom flats anyway. What they're always pushing for is 3-bedroom flats, and my argument to that is, if someone's going to have a 3-bedroom flat, they're going to buy a house.
Absolutely,
So yes, it will be another battle with the planners, no doubt, but because quite clearly they don't live in the real world, and when you give someone the example I just gave you with a guy on 30,000 a year with 150,000. At the end of the day, I'm the guy. My point to the planner would be, I'm the one who's putting the capital at risk. It's my business. I don't want to build 1-bed flats that I can't sell. But if they force us into selling them, all we'll end up doing is keeping them, and we'll just have to let them out ourselves. For example, let's say we had a block of, 50 apartments, and normally we would weight that, in the old days, we'd weight that probably 60% to one beds and 40% to two beds. Well, quite clearly we won't be able to do that any longer. So it is a shame, but the government have brought this on themselves with taking away Help to Buy.
Absolutely. So going back to the high street, Richard, retail. So clearly it's accelerated I'll be dramatic, the death of the high street.
Yeah.
We all knew it was coming, but it has really, really motored on. So 2 points. One, so I think I'm understanding what you're saying, that you don't believe it can be revitalised, but something's going to need to change on the high street. My personal opinion is it will be more experience-based, the type of commercial businesses that will be there, that will attract people, and also there'll be more housing, changes in permitted development rights, etc. And also the second point to that is, I know that you talked about industrial, and I can see that you guys are investing some resources into industrial.
Yes.
And the two are clearly linked, I imagine. So, do you want to talk a little bit about those 2 points?
Yes, of course. Let's talk about the high street first, because it's one of my passions. So, the problem with most high streets in this country is they're Victorian. And they're worn out. The car parks are too expensive. They're all pedestrianised. And for example, how do you go and buy a duvet? Okay, a duvet comes in a big box, doesn't it? How are you expected to buy a duvet when Devon's was in Bournemouth, when the nearest car park is probably a quarter of a mile away? So say you've got 2 duvets, plus you've got your children. How do you get the duvet from Devon's to your car? It's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Victorian High Street, in my opinion, is finished. Modern shopping centres, like you've got in Southampton, where you drive in, you walk into a warm, effectively indoor shopping centre that's got a food court, a cinema linked to it, and maybe other bits and pieces, but very much like West Quay in Southampton. That is where the future is. The traditional high street in main town centres is, in my opinion, you are completely wasting money in trying to get it to work. I mean, they're doing this in Bournemouth. The Debenhams has now gone back to being called Bobby's, which was called in my childhood. They've reopened it on the ground floor. It's got a few makeup counters. It hasn't really changed from when it was Debenhams, to be frank. They put a Thai restaurant in there, or a Pan-Asian restaurant, which I think does fairly well. And then you go up to the next floor, which is now an art gallery. Well, how do you monetarise an art gallery in Bournemouth Town Centre? I wouldn't think that since it's open it's ever taken a penny. So I think that flogging dead horses is really a waste of time. It's a bit like having a relationship with someone and you break up. Invariably, if you go back together, you end up breaking up again. And I think the high street's the same. What needs to happen is a very much more bold vision. So you need to take the high streets, you need to bulldoze them, create good quality high-rise buildings, and I mean good quality high-rise buildings, with maybe a retail outlet on the ground floor, and the dynamics of that development should be able to subsidise that rent on the ground floor to, let's say, £5 a foot. And then you would go to the likes of Apple, Nike, or whoever and say, we really want you here because you're a major brand. We will let you have this space at £5 a foot for the next 15, 20 years. All you've got to do is fit it out. And I think that is how you would pull together back the high street. But then I think what you need to create is good indoor shopping centres as well, where people, I mean, take the weather at the moment. Who wants to go shop in 0 degrees C on Victorian High Street? No one does. People want to be in the warm. So that's what needs to happen to the high streets. And I think, you get rid of the massive shops, you create decent high-rise blocks, big green spaces between them, and you transform. I'm thinking specifically Bournemouth. I don't know if you know Bournemouth.
Yeah, I do.
From the square right the way up to the triangle needs completely demolishing and starting again. And the danger I think that's going to happen is we're going to end up with small piecemeal developments all around, and then we won't get the bigger picture done, and a much more holistic view needs to be taken to the high street with a proper planning, proper planning it out, and local authorities, I think, possibly compulsory purchasing that whole area, repackaging, and then putting it back out to the private development market. And the creation of, as I say, decent quality indoor shopping centres that have got car parking, got food, got a bit of everything, soft play, cinemas, bowling, the whole thing. And I think you mix all of that up in a nice warm atmosphere, and then you've got your shopping centres. And I believe that the point you made, I think it was you that made it just now, is that shopping will change. So this is how I see the future of shopping. You'll walk into a brand, let's call it a bedding brand.
Yeah.
And I gave you the bit about the duvet, and you'll get your phone and you'll scan a code with your phone. You'll hit send, and those products that you touched and felt and seen will just arrive at your home. You won't be carrying bags any longer. They will arrive the next day or even that day at your home. So, because I still believe that we all like to occasionally go and touch something we're going to buy.
Yeah.
This is why Apple have their stores, so you can go and touch and feel it and play with it. And you think, yeah, I really like that. I'm going to get one of those. And I think that's where the high street will evolve to. It will be a total experience.
And in terms of, and that leads nicely onto that second part of the question around logistics, warehouses.
Yeah.
Because I'm now understanding, because of your vision of how you see it, this makes sense to invest in logistics centres, warehouses.
So we're not brave enough at this present minute to do large sheds.
Yeah.
But where I see the market is in startup businesses that need 1,000, 1,200 square foot shed. They're not particularly expensive to buy. You can buy them if you've got a self-administered pension fund with 40, 50,000 quid in it. You could go and buy one because it's a commercial property. You don't need 30%. They're invariably at 180, 200,000 pounds a throw. So you need 60,000, let's say, to go to a bank and get a loan. You then lease that back to your small retail business that's an online business, pay rent in it. So you're building your pension from your small business. And the way I see it is a lot of these smaller high street businesses and a lot of businesses that people have started at home will move to these sheds. And certainly my vision is unfolding as I thought it would. Because if you drive round, particularly this area, if you drive round all the industrial estates that have got the small sheds, you will not find one empty one. No, there's never any voids. And so I think that there's going to be a huge demand for those sort of premises, and hence the reason why we've started on that. So we're doing our first one in Yeovil, which is on the A303, which is obviously a main arterial road. We've got Westland Helicopters up the road, and we're just about to get planning for 48 units here in Bournemouth. We've already got people contacting us wanting to buy the ones in Bournemouth, particularly investors. Wanting to buy, 7 or 8 or 9 in a row. So I see the business probably balancing a little more to industrial and residential over the coming 3, 4, 5 years.
Do you think that, and you're just following what you believe the market's going to do, or is that leading back to maybe you're a bit more cautious now, or maybe it's a bit more self-aware of where you feel the market's going?
So the original driver to doing those sort of sheds was the planning journey was simpler.
Yeah.
Planning in residential terms has become extremely complicated and very, very
subjective. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wanted something that from start to finish was at a much shorter time period. Because as you quite rightly said earlier, did I think that there would be a downturn? Well, one of the dynamics of the development business is that from starting a journey of a development to finishing a journey is a long period of time. I mean, a world war could have started in that period of time. If you take our development on Poole Quay, by the time all those units are sold, we'll have owned that for over 4 years, or we'll be in the from start to finish for 4 years. So that is one of the things that you've got to really keep your finger on. And with sheds, obviously, I'm hoping that will be a lot shorter period, and that's why I want to take more of a balanced approach to it.
Absolutely. What benefits do you think technology can bring to the property industry, Richard?
Well, it is bringing benefits, isn't it? I mean, in site finding, we use various tools in the office which speed up site finding. I think it's very interesting about everyone going on about carbon neutral by 2030, or is it 2050? I think it's 2030 now.
2030, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's just not going to happen, is it? I mean, no. I'll certainly not in this industry. I mean, I'm consistently surprised at where materials come from. I mean, we're doing a development of 4 luxury apartments in Canford Cliffs at the moment. And the bricks are coming from Germany. The bricks are coming from Germany. Yes, I did say that. The bricks are coming from Germany. I mean, what on earth is going on when you need to buy your bricks in Germany? I mean, we've recently done a small development in Parkstone. I mean, the roof tiles came from Belgium. Well, I do not understand why, and if I was 20 years younger, I would look into manufacturing building materials. I do not understand how they can make bricks in Germany cheaper and more cost effective than we could do it here when they've got to transport them from Germany to the UK. And bricks aren't light, are they? They're heavy. So something is very seriously wrong. And if you look at it, once a house is built or a block of apartments is built, most of the stuff that's inside it comes from Europe. It doesn't come from here. I mean, there's something really odd about our economy, where everything or most things seems
imported. I think Germans probably not the best example, as they're known for being incredibly efficient. However, absolutely agree with what you're saying, Richard. It is very odd, isn't it? We should be able to manufacture more in our own country.
Well, I think we've got more flexible labour laws in this country than they have in the rest of Europe. So I don't understand how and why. I'd love to know the reason. I suppose it's probably the same reasons why Tesla put their car factory in Germany and not in the UK.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are your predictions for the property industry for 2022? Give us 2 or 3 bold predictions of what you think is going to happen in the market.
I think I've told you what I think is going to happen to price and growth. I tell you what I do think. I think prices will slow down dramatically. I think that's going to happen. There is still an enormous amount of demand for properties, and the dynamics of the UK are changing dramatically because people are moving. I mean, in this area, for example, there's an area called Branksome Park. There were quite a few houses for sale there 9 months ago. I don't think there's hardly anything for sale in Branksome Park now, because a lot of people that lived in London have moved down here because they now believe that they can work from home and commute to London for, let's say, 2 days a week. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of people moving around the country, I think, even going forward for the next 12, 18 months. And I think the amount of housing starts will slow down as well, because I think the planning system is really starting to affect the flow of opportunity to start sites. But interestingly, as I said to you earlier, I'm contradicting myself to a degree, because we're finding it very hard to get contractors at the moment. But I think that there is no doubt that more planning permissions need to be got out of the system. And so I think that it's going to be, I think, a bit of a difficult year for the industry.
If you were in charge of planning, Richard, what would you do differently? Let's take Bournemouth, Dorset Council, for example, or BCP now. So clearly, every developer I've spoke to is not happy with the current system. What can be changed to improve it?
The problem, quite simply, is that planning officers aren't educated to take a broader approach to making a decision. So they will specifically look at the local plan. They won't look at any of the other issues that are going on in the area. For example, the central government has set much higher targets for BCP Council to deliver housing on. That's almost an irrelevance in a planning officer's mind. They're woefully short of their 5-year housing supply. That seems to be an irrelevance in a planning officer's mind. The planning officer is the decision maker and has the right to overrule other consultees' objections. But unfortunately, most planning officers are scared of their own shadows and will not go about doing that. And I blame that on the senior management within planning departments. I think you need much more entrepreneurial type people running the planning departments, not seasoned local government officers who've spent their whole life working in a town hall.
Do you see it changing anytime soon, or do you think it's gonna take a long time?
I'm pretty sure that things are going to change in this borough because they have to. They can't carry on like they're going. I mean, otherwise the whole thing's just going to melt. Because in a minute, everyone's going to start appealing stuff. Well, that's going to put the workload's going to go up even higher, and then the whole system will just implode. So I think things will change. I think the current leadership have made it very plain that they are very keen to get it right, and I believe that they will work to get it right.
Absolutely. I'm going to say, Richard, thank you so much for your time today. If people wanted to reach out to you, are you on social media, or is there a
I'm on LinkedIn.
I'm on
LinkedIn. I don't do social media except LinkedIn. And I'm more than happy for people to contact me via that.
Absolutely. We'll put your LinkedIn profile onto our show notes, so that'll be there. But thank you so much for your time, Richard. And take care. Have a great day.
Cheers, Tim. Bye-bye.
Thank you. If you like this video, then please check out the video on the screen right now. And please don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more content from property leaders. And please remember to comment on the video below. Thank you.